Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton went at it on the issue of guns, and a pretty clear winner emerged.
That Bernie Sanders has a D- voting record from the NRA. Let's also understand that back in 1988, when I first ran for the United States Congress, way back then, I told the gun owners of the state of Vermont, and I told the people of the state of Vermont, a state which has virtually no gun control, that I supported a ban on assault weapons. And over the years, I have strongly supported instant background checks, doing away with this terrible gun show loophole, and I think we've got to move aggressively at the federal level in dealing with the straw man purchases. Also, I believe, and have fought for, to understand that there are thousands of people in this country today who are suicidal, who are homicidal, but can't get the health care that they need, the mental health care, because they don't have insurance or they're too poor. I believe that everybody in this country has a mental crisis, has got to get mental health counseling immediately.
Do you want to shield gun companies from lawsuits or not?
This was a large and complicated bill. There were provisions in it that I think made sense. For example, do I think that a gun shop in the state of Vermont that sells legally a gun to somebody, and that somebody goes out and does something crazy, that gun shop owner should be held responsible? I don't. On the other hand, where you have manufacturers and where you have gun shops knowingly giving guns to criminals or aiding and abetting that, of course we should take action.
Secretary Clinton, is Bernie Sanders tough enough on guns?
No, not at all. I think that we have to look at the fact that we lose 90 people a day from gun violence. This has gone on too long, and it's time the entire country stood up against the NRA. The majority of our country supports background checks, and even the majority of gun owners do. Senator Sanders did vote 5 times against the Brady bill. Since it was passed, more than 2 million prohibited purchases have been prevented. He also did vote, as he said, for this immunity provision. I voted against it. I was in the Senate at the same time. It wasn't that complicated to me. It was pretty straightforward to me that he was going to give immunity to the only industry in America. Everybody else has to be accountable, but not the gun manufacturers. And we need to stand up and say enough of that. We're not going to let it continue.
We're going to bring you
All right, so in terms of the politics aspect of this and not the policy aspect, Hillary won that exchange big time. I take no joy in saying that, but I think it's true. And as a side note here, Hillary actually has some pretty epic no's. When she says no, she said it once there, as you heard. Oh, is he good enough on the issue of guns? No. She also said no at another time when it was something about the email scandal or whatever. And she was asked if she wanted to respond to some attack from irrelevant Lincoln Chafee or somebody like that. She's like, no. So her no's are epic. I'll give her that. I'm not a Hillary fan, as everybody knows, but that was pretty solid. So from a politics aspect of it, I think she nailed him on that. In terms of policy, it's a little more complicated. So again, for politics, she was confident. She hammered Bernie on one of his only weaknesses here. But the policy aspect of it, it's actually very nuanced. So on theissues.org explains about Bernie's stance on guns, quote, "It's a mixed approach, no federal handgun waiting period, some protection for gun manufacturers, ban assault weapons." So that's their summary. And let me give you a further breakdown here. He voted for banning assault weapons, so he's not wrong about that. He voted for a ban on high-capacity magazines, right about that. He voted yes on background checks, right about that too. His questionable votes were kind of alluded to there. He voted for prohibiting suing gun makers for misuse of guns. So as he explained, he doesn't think that, so if somebody goes and buys a gun from a gun shop, they're fine, they pass a background check, whatever, and then they eventually do some sort of a crime with that gun, Bernie doesn't think it's fair to sue the gun shop owner for selling the gun to that person, because how the fuck would a gun shop owner know? Now that's framed within the context of this debate as, oh, how could he vote that way? Honestly, I really don't think it's that irrational a position. I think I'm probably a little to the left of Bernie on gun control, but not much. But that seems like a reasonable point to make, where he's saying it's not necessarily the gun shop owner's fault if somebody passes a background check, they're fine, they sell them a gun, and then eventually they do something horrible with it. Now, again, he makes the clarification there where he says, if you sell it knowingly to somebody who has a sketchy background, and then they go do it, well, that's a different story. And then, of course, the family should be able to sue the gun shop owner for not doing their job properly and selling guns to people that have a clean background check and stuff. So he's being nuanced there, but it gets lost in the anger over the fact that he only has a D- rating and not an F rating. And then also, he voted to allow firearms in checked bags on Amtrak. I mean, I guess the point there is you should be able to move your gun from one place to another. If you don't have your own private transportation like a car, you need to take Amtrak. You could check it in your bag and go that way. Whatever. I could look past it. I don't think that's too big of a deal. And then I think the biggest issue is voting against the Brady bill multiple times. Because he disagreed with the length of the waiting period for handgun purchases in the Brady bill. If I'm not mistaken, the original bill was a 5-day waiting period, I think, for when you buy a handgun. And what he said is, that's a little too big government for me. If somebody has a clean background and, they just want a handgun, why should everybody have to wait 5 days? That seems a little bit overkill for me. And he follows it up with, at a state-by-state basis, I'm fine with it. If New York wants to do a 10-day waiting period, whatever. But some states that are more rural, that use guns more, no, I don't think that they should have to wait 5 days. I don't really like that vote. I was a fan of the Brady bill for a variety of reasons. But is it something that, it is nuanced and you could see where he's coming from? And is it a deal breaker, in other words? Like, oh my God, progressives can't vote for Bernie because of that. Don't be ridiculous. And that's how Clinton's trying to frame it, because this is one area where she's a little to the left of Bernie. So she's like, no, he's not strong enough on this. I'm the real progressive. Yeah, that's who you gotta vote for. Except me, I'm Miss Liberal all day long. On every other issue, Bernie Sanders is pretty significantly to the left of Hillary Clinton. So overall, from a politics perspective, I think that Hillary won that exchange fairly significantly. From a policy perspective, I think it's true that Hillary's probably better on guns from a policy perspective. But how much hinges on that? How much would I weigh that? Not much, because on every other issue, she's not as good as Bernie.